Larry Fink, BlackRock. Salmin Ramji, Vanguard. Abigail Johnson, Fidelity. Ronald O'Hanley, State Street. And other major institutional investors, what you were never told about Boeing's 22-year AS9100 for Aerospace International Standard Gap, FAA self-certification, and the illusion of quality. Ladies and gentlemen, investors, analysts, and fiduciaries of American wealth, I too am a Boeing shareholder. I've been involved with quality for over 40 years. I own my own business since 2011, and here we go. For more than 2 decades, the American people, the flying public, and the institutional investors who entrusted billions into Boeing were given an illusion of quality, a certification of oversight of safety. Today, we are going to walk through that timeline, ladies and gentlemen, step by step, from 9/11 to the present, and expose why that illusion was so dangerous and is so dangerous, and why none of you were ever shown what was really happening behind the curtain. My trip to Boeing facilities began with one important moment, a Reuters interview with Elizabeth Lund, Boeing's Vice President of Quality, in June 2024. In that interview, Boeing painted a picture of a company committed to transparency and reform. But the more I listened, the more one fact stood out like a warning siren, a fact that the public has never been clearly told. For 22 years, yes, 22 years, Boeing operated without AS9100 certification, the foundation of aerospace quality standard required of nearly every supplier in its chain. Let me say that again because it matters. The supplier had to be certified, but Boeing did not for 22 years. And that double standard shaped an entire generation of aerospace manufacturing without anyone asking how or why or who allowed it. But I did. Those of suppliers across the United States have carried the burden of AS9100 compliance since the early 2000s and throughout the world. This is not just an American issue. This is a global issue. They paid register fees. They paid consultants. They paid for the quality manuals, the internal audits, the travel, the lodging, the meals for auditors, the gap analysis, the documentation systems, the training requirements, and the yearly certifications, surveillance audits. They paid because Boeing demanded it, because the industry demanded it. Meanwhile, Boeing, the prime manufacturer, the one company whose influence overshadows the entire aerospace sector, did not carry the certification its own suppliers were required to maintain. On Boeing's own supplier portal, where companies go to learn what is required to do business with Boeing, it stated clearly that third-party registers must be ANAB accredited or internationally equivalent. Internationally equivalent? That means certification from companies with wildly different safeguards. China, Iran, Pakistan, just to name a few. Nations whose oversight systems, legal structures, and geopolitical interests do not align with safety, transparency, or American national security. Yet Boeing's own portal approved them as equivalent. In 2003, the International Aerospace Quality Group launched the OASIS database, the Online Aerospace Systems Information System, in actuality, ANSI-ANAB, designed that presentation, designed that supplier bulletin, the global repository for AS9100 certifications was the Online Aerospace Systems Information System. And what was Boeing there? What was their role? Boeing governed 65% of the IAQG. They influenced, shaped, and steered the very system meant to ensure independent oversight of aerospace manufacturing. Let me repeat that again. The company being regulated controlled 2/3 of the body overseeing regulators. And if you look into the OASIS database from 2003 onward, you find nothing. No AS9100 certification for Boeing, 2003, 8, 2012, 2018, 2020, and 2024. Yet the suppliers were required to have it. In 2009, the FAA entered Boeing and made the decision that would define a decade of catastrophe. The FAA granted Boeing the power to self-certify its own aircraft technologies like the MCAS system that killed 346 people, and its flight critical systems. Self-certify. And they did one worse. Certain Boeing employees became FAA designates, meaning that they had FAA authority while being paid directly by Boeing. And you know what that meant? Their CEO was directly the FAA administrator at Boeing, a full-time Boeing FAA inspector paid by Boeing, answering to Boeing and evaluating Boeing. With the Ethiopian airline and also the Indonesian airline crashes occurred in 2018 and 19, the FAA administrator himself admitted the FAA never allows company to police themselves or to self-certify, and because they did, Boeing never informed the FAA of the implementation of MCAS. This is what the news media doesn't let you know. This is what the DOJ said that Boeing told a fib to the FAA. The DOJ sits on ANSI-ANAB's board, not just as a member, but as a customer. They didn't even know. The flight critical system that ultimately killed 346 people. I was there June 18th with David Calhoun listening to a woman who was in the crowd there saying, "You killed my daughter, you killed my family," from I think she was from the Indonesian airline. From 2014 through 2024, major institutional investors, yes, gentlemen, I mentioned you, BlackRock, Vanguard, Fidelity, State Street, and others began rapidly increasing their positions in Boeing. At the exact same time that Boeing took a seat on the Management System Accreditation Council of ANAB, the same body that can grant, suspend, and withdraw certification. Boeing sat there for 10 years, 10 years of influence, 10 years of oversight power, 10 years of shaping the environment investors relied on to judge corporate integrity. And for all those 10 years, Boeing itself was not AS9100 certified, yet suppliers were required to be. Investors were led to believe Boeing was operating within the same system it demanded from others, but Boeing wasn't. Do you hear me? Boeing wasn't. What you were shown was the illusion of certification, not the reality. In June 2024, Elizabeth Lunn, Boeing's vice president of quality, was interviewed by Reuters, and she admitted publicly Boeing is willing and prepared to obtain AS9100 certification. 22 years from July 2002 to June 2024. And they were prepared to obtain, meaning they never had it, from July 2002 again. Supplier bulletin to June 2024. Boeing built 12,000 commercial aircraft and 400 military aircraft in a system that was uncertified, unverified, unsanctioned, and hidden from you, the investor, hidden from me as I was investing. That statement from Elizabeth Lunn was the missing key, and when she said it, everything snapped into place. In October 2024, I went to Boeing's facilities in Everett, Renton, Auburn, and Northfield on my own time because I care about humanity and those people who are flying in uncertified, unverified, and unsanctioned planes. And I still hear that woman saying, "You killed my daughter, you killed my family." I spoke with employees. I asked them, "Do you know anything about AS9100? They said no. Do you know anything about internal audits? They said no. Have you received any training on quality auditing? They said no, and worse. If we wanted to, our supervisors would never allow it because they always say that they aren't making schedule. Ladies and gentlemen, you cannot make this up. This is why I say, I am sorry you didn't have Daryl Gibberman back then because I didn't find out the full truth, the full magnitude until 2024 either. But now we have it. Now it is exposed. Now the illusion is shattered. When a company builds planes without certifications, governs its own regulators, sits on top of an accreditation system meant to judge it, and sells the illusion of quality to the very investors funding their future, this is not a lapse. This is not a mistake. This is not oversight. This is a cathedral of deception engineered in boardrooms, baptized in silence, and paid for with your trust. And now the truth has landed, and it hits harder than gravity. And remember this, as Dwight D. Eisenhower said, and I use this all the time, it is not the size of the dog in the fight that counts. It's the size of the fight in the dog. And I do this for you, Vanguard, for BlackRock, for all of you, Fidelity and State Street. I do it for you. I do it for me. I'm an investor. 203-556-1493. I thank you.